welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today, I have a planning adjacent episode for you as we are going to talk about all things in the back to school season. Now, if you don't have kids that are going back to school, I still think there are things you can get out of this episode because to me, going back to school isn't just about going back to school. It's about a feeling. It's about that renewal that happens to us every fall as we're taken back to the time when maybe we went back to school and something in us just shifts away from that more carefree vibe of the summer for many of us into something a little bit different. So if you are just thinking about how you want to make that transition in a purposeful manner, this episode is for you. And we are going to talk, as promised, about 5 things other than planners to think about as you make this transition into Q4. All right, the very first thing to think about is routines. And this is quite a broad one, and to me, probably the most important. This is one of those seasons where many of us have to rethink a lot of things logistically. And I think even if you don't have to, it's a really nice time to do so anyway. Now, if you've already done this in a very detailed manner with the midpoint of the year, as some people do, you may not need a refresh going into Q4. Maybe all you need is just a little, is that working? Is there anything I want to tweak further? But if you tend to go more by season, or if you do have kids headed into any stage of schooling, or if you work in education or academia yourself, then you know you have a lot of routines that might need revisiting, might need changing, and it's just a perfect time to go ahead and really take a close look at many of them. I think the easiest way to do this, and I wouldn't even say it's easy, but the most comprehensive way to do this is to actually sit down and create a list of all of the things that you would consider routines. And to me, this includes anything that you do repetitively multiple days per week. I will say, for me, there are more things I do on weekdays that I would consider routines. My weekends are a bit more varied, and it's harder for me to even come up with that many routines we do on weekends. But at the same time, I think both are worth thinking about. So the way I did this was to actually go through the course of the day and just name all of the different routines that kind of tend to shape my day. And many of them are repetitive. And it really is a reminder that so much of our lives is done in cycles and repetition. And of course, there's variation. And it's the fun things that vary that can really add spice to life, that can make time kind of slow down. The things can make our memories vivid. And yet, just from a mathematical perspective, so much of it is stuff that we do day in and day out. And there's ways to make this work for us and make this more pleasant and more intentional. And then there's also the option of being on autopilot and just having it be a bit forgettable and just purely functional. So again, I think going through and thinking about all of these things one at a time can be helpful. So I'm going to give an example just because I think talking about this vaguely is less helpful than me sharing what it might look like to come up with a list of all the routines that might be impacted by a new season or a new school year or a new academic calendar. All right, so I'm in my list. Here we go. The first one would be my wake up routine, including the time. Right now, that's usually around 5 on weekdays and more variable on weekends. I could think about whether that works or whether I need to change things a little bit. My next routine is what I do upon waking. Currently, that is usually read, plan my day in my planner, including write out my basic schedule and create my do list for the day by referring to my list for the week. I fill out my 5-year journal, I do my headspace, and then I generally do some kind of a workout. But a new routine that I've just added on and I need to figure out how to incorporate is I am trying out a Pilates studio. So I'm doing that about 2 times a week on average. And I need to figure out how that is going to change the routine on those days. Do I want to get up early so I can really complete my entire routine? Or do I want to get up around the same time and just move some of those things, either skip them or move them to another day? I haven't decided yet, but that's something that I want to figure out as Q4 is upon us. Then there are breakfast routines, both for myself in terms of what I choose to eat and when I choose to eat it for breakfast, and my kids and how much I help them and the options we have available. That needs to be thought through because I want to make sure we have things that are efficient and things that they like to make getting ready for school with them just a little bit more pleasant. Then there are the work routines, things I do when I first sit down to work. I'll skip the commuting routines because for me, those, I guess I should mention them. That's another routine. They're not going to change really too much, except for maybe talking to my husband about which days I'll be driving and which days that he'll be driving. So I guess that does come after those breakfast routines, the getting ready, the showering, and then the commute. That might even include playlists. My kids love to make playlists, and my daughter has talked about changing our routine there. We used to do kind of a shuffle each day where the kids picked songs and we'd alternate, but my oldest really wants to have each kid own their own day. So it's like, her day or her brother's day or her little sister's day for the song, the playlist. I mean, whatever makes it fun for them, right? So that would be kind of a mini routine, but still something that counts. My work routine. So what do I do when I sit down to work in my clinical office or when I sit down to work for myself? My clinical routine is actually pretty darn same. Like there's a sameness to it. I tend to attack my inbox in the same order. For anyone curious, I go to RX refills first, then patient advice requests, then staff messages, and then new results. And then obviously I see patients as they arrive, but I'm doing that inbox stuff in the middle and I do chart prep between patients. I don't plan on changing any of those routines, but just always nice to think through them. Then there's my non-clinical work routines, which are generally to look at my list and just attack the first thing that looks good. I know it's a little bit less systematic, but tends to be how I prefer to work on my non-clinical time. There are lunchtime routines you might want to think about. For me, that involves, what do I eat for lunch? Do I bring it? Do I do anything with any downtime, like a walk on some of my work days? Then there are shutdown routines for work. You might even have routines related to various meetings, and perhaps those deserve rethinking. Like, are there meetings you could get rid of or meetings you could streamline? I have shutdown routines for kind of how I migrate any undone tasks at the end of the day. And I even have routines for what I tend to listen to on my commute. And then there's the kind of kid after school routines, which vary depending on which activities. And those are all going to shift compared to last year. So I really want to think through those and how I can provide the right level of support without hovering for homework and things like that. There's dinner time routines. And this year, I think we may be able to eat together a little bit more often than previous because we have fewer travel sports in the evenings, although still some. So that might not change too much, but still something to think through. And then finally, bedtime routines, both for myself, which would include kind of the actual getting ready to bed, skincare, teeth, all that fun stuff. And then also for the kids in terms of timing, in terms of when we'll allow screen time and when we'll kind of remove devices and all that. That's a lot of decisions. And obviously, many of these are not going to be set in stone. They're going to be things that we try and then we play with and then we move around depending on how things go. But I think sitting down and actually thinking through them will remove a lot of the overwhelm as we notice that everything does shift. It might even provide kind of an openness to maybe taking notes on what works or ideas from the kids about things we might want to try. It also bears mentioning because I think it's sort of tangential to routines that some people have daily metrics that they track. Cal Newport actually just did a fun episode where he talked about how he had a few daily metrics that he stopped tracking purposefully over the summer to give himself a break. And then he had trouble getting started again. So I like that. That was very relatable to hear. For myself, I currently track, and I have for many years, whether I did my meditation, whether I went outside, whether I read, whether I did my Spanish language app, and whether I listened to music. I have that in my planner pretty much every day. That doesn't mean I do all those things every day. I absolutely don't, but they're things that I kind of aim to do if I have time and I enjoy tracking them. But every season I think about whether I might want to change something or add to that. I have started tracking my screen time minutes just on a daily basis in my planner, as well as phone pickups, just those metrics that Apple captures. I'll write them down. And then one random thing, I think I mentioned this on my Quirky Habits episode. I love writing my New York Times games results in my planner. I'm not really even doing it to track it. It's just fun for me. It's almost like I'm celebrating it. So that is a pretty detailed overview of all of the routines which might shift and might change or might be left as is as we enter a new season. And I don't have answers for you yet in terms of the things that I do want to change. I do not recommend trying to change like all of them at once. I thought through all of these, not because I'm saying, oh, I'm going to optimize every single one of these the minute that I decide it's Q4, but because maybe a few will stand out as, that didn't work, or, hey, this is something we could try for a few of them. And so I can just pay extra attention. So I hope that helped and wasn't too overwhelming for giving you a framework to think of what I think is probably the most important thing to think of as we enter a new season, especially a season like Q4, which is routines. We're going to get a quick break, and I promise the other 4 things are not as detailed or long. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. Today's episode comes to you with support from IXL. The autumn season is in full swing, and IXL helps keep your homeschool lessons or school enrichment structured and steady, whether you're following a set curriculum or creating your own. I personally love the simplicity that IXL offers. I don't have to dig through endless resources. IXL is organized by grade and topic, so I can jump right into what each child needs. My kids have been using IXL for years, and I really trust it to help solidify concepts and meet them where they are. Just like each leaf changes at its own pace, each child learns differently. IXL adapts so kids can move ahead when they're ready or revisit the topic until it truly clicks. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. That's why you should say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for $15 per month. Mint Mobile's plans start at $15 per month, and there are no unexpected overages or hidden fees. All Mint Mobile plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. So ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/BLP. That's mintmobile.com/BLP. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is brought to you with support from Green Chef. I love fall energy, like the fresh start of back to school, plus all of that delicious fall food. Warm, homey flavors just make everything feel comforting. Plus, with the new seasonal energy, it's the perfect time to reset and bring healthy habits back into focus. Green Chef can help you do just that, even if your season is packed with school festivities and events. Green Chef's meals are made up of real, clean ingredients, and they help you build lasting healthy habits without the hassle. With 80-plus dietitian-approved weekly meal options, Green Chef makes it easy to find meals that fit your lifestyle. Pick from Mediterranean, gluten-free, plant-based, and protein-heavy. There's even a gut and brain health option and calorie-smart choices too. They really are family-friendly, and my kids are always so excited for our Green Chef dinners. Make this fall your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50bestlaid and use code 50bestlaid to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50bestlaid, as in 50bestlaid, at greenchef.com/50bestlaid. All right, I am back, and today we are talking about 5 things other than planners to think about carefully as we enter into the back-to-school season or the early fall season of the year. I know it's August, but my kids, as this is airing, are back to school this week, and I know I'm not alone. If your kids are not headed back to school right now, they may be headed there in the next few weeks. You may have college students, which start in August. You might be on the medical resident calendar, which starts in July. So I think this is going to be applicable to many, even if there are some who are either don't have kids going back to school or who are going to be saving this episode for later. All right, the second thing to think about is sleep. And the reason this is important is because compared to the summer, you're more likely to be doing some things that require early starts to the day. And if you have early starts to the day and all these new ambitious things that you want to do, or more driving that you have to do, or helping your kids to get ready, you're probably going to need to make sure that you are not trying to kind of like burn the candle on both ends, so to speak. You need to really pay a lot of attention to bedtime. Are you going to get enough sleep? How much sleep you actually need? My podcasting partner, Laura Vanderkam, can tell you exactly because she's tracked it for many, many years. She needs something like 7.4 hours on average. I actually think I'm pretty similar to that. So maybe that is kind of an average amount of sleep need. But I know if I get fewer than 7 hours for a couple days in a row, I'm pretty useless. So I need to pay careful attention, especially if I'm adding anything that's going to be earlier to, am I going to be getting to bed on time most of the time? And if not, how can I catch up on sleep if I need to? So that's number 2 to think about. And I think that's just important to pay attention to. Even if you're not someone that tracks sleep all the time, a new season is a good time to just give it a little bit more attention than maybe you had previously. The third realm relates to a prior guest we had not that long ago. And that was, oh my gosh, I'm having a total Allison, who talked about communication and mental load, and Allison Damager. That's who she was. She was amazing. I love that episode. If you don't know what I'm talking about, she's an expert, actually a professor who studies like the, mental load between partners. And she's also a new mom. So she has a new perspective on that. And she was on the show just a few weeks ago. But one thing that can alleviate mental load, or at least kind of help both partners, if this is a 2-partner situation, understand what the other one is handling, has to do with partner communication. So taking a close look at your partner or family communication strategies are really, really important as the school year starts. Things got really lax for us over the summer. We just really didn't need to do a lot of paying attention to what was going on because there wasn't that much going on. My kids had a lot fewer activities. Even the activities they had were kind of the same each week. Our board, I fill out this board. I've talked about it before. It's an Erin Condren whiteboard, and it has the days Monday through Sunday and then a little to-do list area. And man, it is still the hub of our family. Even as my kids have gotten older, every single week I fill that out and we always look at it and talk about it. And it shows who's driving the kids, who has which activities which day, what's for dinner, if there's any one-off appointment. And then there's a little checklist section for kind of things that are up and coming to-dos for the family specifically. And it really wasn't that necessary over the summer, but it's definitely necessary now. And I recommend that any communication strategy within a family have both a discussion component. So maybe you put stuff up on the board, or you put stuff into your electronic system, your Google Calendar, your Skylight Calendar, whatever you're using. But you should also have a quick check-in to actually talk about that, because that's the moment when maybe another family member would look at it and say, oh, wait, I didn't put it there, but on Tuesday I have a field trip and I'm actually not going to be home until 9 o'clock or whatever it is. So some kind of discussion component where people look at it and say, kind of add their piece if there is anything to add their feedback. Perhaps they might say, oh, I see we have Saturday open. I would like to do XYZ. And then that would be a great time to think about it. And a discussion is not sufficient, because if you just talk about stuff, but you have nothing to refer back to, honestly, I feel like that could lead to a lot of arguments, a lot of misunderstandings, and a lot of disappointment. So there should be some kind of board or electronic record or whatever works for your family for everyone to look at, a source of truth, I guess, for what is going on with the family. All right, item number 4 on the list is mood management. We've gotten really granular in terms of logistics, and this has been very, a lot of back to school energy, but we don't want to forget our moods and our emotions, and that this time of year can be a lot for all of us, for parents, for kids, for grandparents, for teachers, for everyone. Kids get all excited and amped up, but then they often quickly get a little bit burned out when they realize that going back to school is not a 1-week kind of a situation, that it's here to stay and they have to keep going. And maybe they're in a year with more homework than the last year. Maybe they don't have their friend group sorted out yet and they're trying to figure out kind of where they stand. Just a lot of newness can be absolutely exhausting. So it is really helpful to build in check-in times and space for kids to process. This is not the time to pack your weekends full with social events and activities if you can help it. I know some sports and activities just start with the school year. As I am recording this, one of my kids is at cross country before the school year even starts. So, again, you can't help it with everything, but if there are things that you can wait to start, like one example would be tennis. I know I want my kids to do a little bit of tennis, a couple of my kids that were interested to try a little bit of tennis this fall, but I do not want to do it in August. First of all, it's very hot. But second of all, I just want to see how everything else goes. And I know that tennis is an activity that is unlikely to sell out or be unavailable later. So for things where you don't have to sign up right away, it can be really, really helpful to kind of put them off, to give kids more space, to see how things are working for a while first. And also to just, again, give them more downtime to process. And then finally, my last category is fun. Yeah, I know. I'm always mentioning the fun. I'm so boring with all this fun stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But really, January and back to school season can have a lot in common. They can just feel kind of like rigid. There's a lot of drudgery. There's a lot of like to-dos all of a sudden. There's check boxes, there's homework, and you have to be there at a certain time or whatever. And we want to make sure that this time, like any other time, still has things that are fun for you, fun for your kids, fun for your partner. Just these are our lives. We don't get to put them on pause for back to school season and then like enjoy it later. We want to make sure there are still things most days, maybe a little thing even every day that brings us joy. So make sure that you're looking at the calendar. And in addition to all the meetings and the things that you are doing in order to move things forward and check off the boxes, that you have things on there that are for relaxation and for fun. And one thing you can do is to talk to the kids about, where is their downtime going to be? They're doing activities and they're doing homework. I have one kid that has signed up for something almost every single night. I mean, pretty much every single day except for Sunday, because they're just very excited about various activities and they want a full calendar, or at least they're attracted to the idea of one. And I have already said, like, hey, when are you going to chill a little bit? Like, what day are you going to relax? When are you going to see friends? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's important for them to think about where they can fit in fun. Maybe some kids like to kind of relax after school and just play basketball on the street or play video games, whatever it is, and then start their homework at a certain time. Maybe some kids are the opposite and they like to get their homework done and then enjoy some downtime. Maybe some kids like to make sure they've gotten all their work done on the week and have a pretty empty weekend to just kind of relax or get together with friends. And then the question of like, do they want help to do social things? Because kids after a certain age kind of want to figure that stuff out themselves. But then I'm learning there's a sort of middle ground age where they kind of make plans with each other, but they also cannot drive. So they can't entirely make plans without talking to the parents. So maybe figuring out a system for how you can help them without trying to set up the plans for them can be great as they enter these new stages. All right. Well, that concludes my 5 things other than planners to think about carefully as you enter the back to school season. Of course, it is still really fun to think about planners and supplies. I know I talked about the Order Out of Chaos planner on the last episode, and my 6th grader is planning on trying that. My 8th grader is up in the air about what she would like to use for this year, and I think we're going to take a little trip to like Barnes & Noble or Target for her to look at some options before the start of the school year. And she also loves planning electronically as well. She's experimented with various apps, as well as even just some classic planning in Apple Notes. I think she would also love Notion, actually, so I should show that to her. She probably could teach me a lot about Notion after using it for like 15 minutes, honestly. So yeah, I would love to have them on a couple months after the school year starts and let them give reviews of their systems if they are willing. So maybe that will be to come. If you have a planner that you love or a system that you love for family communication, please send me a note. You can email me at sarah.hart, H-A-R-T.unger, U-N-G-E-R @gmail.com. You can always reply in the comments to any show notes posts, which are all on theshoebox.com, THESHUBOX.com. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. I was going to say sign up for my newsletter. I just sent out my August newsletter right before I started recording this episode. But there is a way to get the archives. If you sign up and you're too late to get August and you want it, you can't figure it out, just email me. And then, of course, you'll be signed up for September. I've got lots of fun things coming down the pike. I did receive the ARC copies, that means advanced reader copies, for Best Laid Plans. So it's been really, really fun to have my book in physical form. I literally used my own book to help me plan my month. Like I was like, ooh, where's that lovely handy checklist about how to plan your month? I think I'll use that to plan my month. So that was awesome. It worked. So it's always good to report. All right. Well, I will be back next week with some more planning fun, likely the Q&A episode to come. I have some guests on the pipeline working on that. So stay tuned. I will be in your feed next Monday. And in the meantime, have a wonderful week, whether you're enjoying summer or you're back to school already.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.